Imagine British comedy without Mrs. Brown's Boys. It's hard, isn't it? Whether you like it or not, this show burst onto the scene in 2011 and became a cultural sensation because of its crass jokes. It had over-the-top characters, was different, loud, chaotic, and unabashedly old school. Over the years, a few important cast members left, some without making a big deal out of it and others with a lot of drama. Why did they leave one of the most popular shows in the UK and Ireland? Personal problems? Differences in creativity? Or something else? Let's look at it more closely. At the real reasons why these actors quit Mrs. Brown's Boys and how it changed the program for good. Before it became one of the BBC's most popular comedies, Mrs. Brown's Boys started off far from the bright lights of TV studios. The story actually starts in the small theatres of Ireland in the early 1990s. Brendan O'Carroll, who was a stand-up comic and a struggling writer at the time, had an idea. He made up a figure who would transform his life based on the strong women he had known growing up in Ireland. Agnes Brown. Agnes was a no-nonsense, foul-mouthed Dublin mother with a heart of gold. She was both chaotic and kind. O'Carroll first introduced her in his radio play and then in his self-published book, The Mammy. This book set the stage for what would soon become a huge hit on stage. Initially, Brendan was never going to play the part of Agnes Brown. But when the actress who was supposed to portray the part didn't show up for a live performance of one of his early plays, Brendan did what any natural actor would do. He put on a frock, a wig, and took on the role himself. And that's how Mrs. Brown came to be. Not on the page, but on stage. People in the audience responded right away. There was something rough and unpredictable and true about this Irish mother who shattered the fourth wall, insulted people with love, and nevertheless held her family together with her willpower. Brendan started taking the play on tour around the country and then across the ocean as it started to get popular. These shows were not at all polished or normal. The pandemonium was actually part of what made it beautiful. Cut were cues that were not lined up correctly. There were scripted moments, but there were also comments directed at audience members and even, out of character, direct address. It wasn't one of those intellectual things that it claimed not to be, it was this and incredibly funny. The concerts became quite popular, especially with working-class Irish and British audiences who saw some version of their family on stage, though it was usually louder, dirtier, and with a pint and a swear word. Mrs. Brown's Boys didn't make it to the big screen until 2011, almost 20 years after it initially appeared on stage. The UK's BBC One, on the other hand, took a chance on O'Carroll's low-budget comedic adaptation. A lot of the formats still use stage customs, live audiences, evident production mistakes, and observations made directly to the camera. People who didn't like it were not impressed. Fans of the show made fun of it for having an old-fashioned sense of humor, too many innuendos, and what they thought was cheap laughter. Brendan O'Carroll didn't just make up a character. He used his family and acquaintances as the basis for the cast. His wife, Jennifer Gibney, played Kathy, who was Agnes's daughter. Danny played Dermot, while Fiona played Maria, his daughter. His sister, Eilish O'Carroll, even played Winnie McGugan, the friendly neighbor. There was an undeniable chemistry between the characters, a warmth that even the most ardent critic couldn't deny. But that closeness also caused problems from time to time because it was so real. Relationships changed throughout the years, and there were times when emotions would flare up off-screen. The spectacle and the brand grew more closely linked than ever before. The live tour went on with full arenas in the UK and Australia. Christmas specials were must-see TV shows that drew record numbers of viewers every year. There were novels, DVDs, toys, and even Mrs. Brown's Boys movie, which came out in 2014. That had bad reviews but nevertheless did well at the box office in the UK and Ireland. Brendan O'Carroll didn't just make a persona, he made a whole comedic business. But being famous caused problems. People who had been in the cast for a long time started to leave. Some left for personal reasons, while others left because of work disagreements. And the fans started to notice. Even though Mrs. Brown's Boys has its flaws, it is nonetheless a cultural touchstone for British and Irish television. There is no disputing the effect it has had, whether you love it or detest it. Mrs. Brown's Boys is different from other high-concept comedy and prestige TV shows because it is unrefined, old-fashioned, and proudly itself. The success story is about being strong, having passion, and being willing to take a chance, even if that chance means a father in a cardigan yelling at his kids in a false living room. And for Brendan O'Carroll, what started as a last-minute change on stage became one of the funniest things to come out of his generation. But even while the show was starting to get into a groove on air, things were already changing behind the scenes, starting with someone very close to Brendan O'Carroll. Maria Brown and Fiona O'Carroll. Fiona O'Carroll, who played Maria Brown, the sweet but strong-willed daughter-in-law of Agnes and the long-suffering wife of Dermot, was one of the first big stars to leave Mrs. Brown's Boys. This upset a lot of fans. Fiona was more than simply another member of the cast. She was Brendan O'Carroll's real-life daughter and had been in the Mrs. Brown world since the beginning. Fiona helped make Maria one of the most down-to-earth and approachable characters on the program, from early stage productions in the 1990s to the primetime BBC version. Fans were shocked when they heard in 2022 that she wouldn't be joining the ensemble for the live stage tour. You need to think about how important Fiona was to the program to understand why she left. There was never a typical sitcom called Mrs. Brown's Boys. It was a family event. Fiona practically grew up with the program. Before the stardom, the TV lights, and the world tours, she was there. She portrayed Maria when the lines got messed up on stage and the jokes fell flat with a smile and a nudge. Over time, Fiona's role changed from a shy newcomer to the Brown family circus to a central figure, the calm in the storm, and the voice of reason in a world full of crazy behavior. Fiona was very open and honest during the interview, and she shockingly disarmedly answered the topic about why she was leaving. After more than 10 years of playing Maria, she found herself at a crossroads in her life. She said, "I felt like I was living someone else's story. I had to write my own." Not simply leaving a character, but saying yes to herself much more. The woman was in her 40s and a mother, and she very much found life outside of Brown's house. There was no quick or automatic response. It was thoughtful. She talked about a time with her kids, a place where she could grow, and the need to get away from something that didn't feel like it belonged to her anymore or had an instant vibe about it. People naturally started to guess. Fans wanted to know if anything else was going on. Was there drama going on behind the scenes? Was there hostility between family members building up? It's not easy to end a show when your dad is the boss. But Fiona didn't spend any time putting an end to any rumors. She kept saying in interview after interview that there was no fallout, no fight, and no bad emotions. She and her dad, Brendan, were still quite close. Brendan has also been proud of the choice and has said so. He told the reporters, "She's my daughter first, not just Maria. I admire her for knowing what she needs." It really didn't make her absence any less obvious. Maria Brown may not have been the most exciting figure on the stage. There were no wigs, curled hoots, or falls. She was really important. For Dermot, the anchor of feelings. For Agnes, the beam of equilibrium with craziness. And in a lot of respects, the audiences are there. Maria was a real person who acted like a normal person in the thick of all the cartoonish insanity. Mrs. Brown's Boys felt a little less stable and a little more crazy without it. Even though other characters took over, fans could spot the difference. Fiona's choice also changed how things worked on the show. For a long time, the strength of Mrs. Brown's Boys has been in its close-knit cast, which is made up of relatives and extremely old acquaintances. But with time, the formerly stubborn core started to change. Fiona's leaving was one of the first signals that even a family show based on tradition and devotion would have to alter. Her choice started conversations about taking care of yourself, burnout, and the need to step away from something you love when it no longer serves your spirit. Fiona has almost completely stayed out of the public eye since she left the show. She has decided to spend time with her family. She isn't against the thought of going back to acting, but her priorities are elsewhere. She has never said she regrets leaving, even though she does conduct interviews and speak on stage from time to time. In fact, she seems more stable than ever. And has shown that sometimes leaving is not the end of the tale, but the beginning of a new one. Fans of Mrs. Brown's Boys may no longer see her as Maria Brown. Still, there's little question that Fiona O'Carroll left a mark on the show. Rory Cowan. This one really hurt. Fans were shocked when Rory Cowan, who played the always gorgeous and flamboyant Rory Brown, said he was leaving Mrs. Brown's Boys in 2017. He wasn't just another actor. He was the heart and soul of the show. Rory added a type of joy to the show with his lively personality, crazy style, and sharp humor that not many other characters could match. His character's frequent banter with Agnes, his crazy facial expressions, and the chemistry he had with Brendan O'Carroll made him an instant fan favorite. For a lot of people, Rory was Mrs. Brown's kid, and it seemed like losing a part of the show's heart when he left. Rory had been with the Browns long before the cameras started rolling. In fact, he began his career as Brendan O'Carroll's publicist, working behind the scenes to help promote the early stage shows in Ireland and the UK. Brendan eventually offered Rory the part of Agnes's son when it came time to cast the role. It was only supposed to last until someone else could be found. Rory was a natural, though. With his famous bleached hair, contagious grin, and one-of-a-kind demeanor, he brought the character to life in a way that no one else could. People quickly fell in love with him, and Rory became an important part of the cast. So when he left the live stage tour in 2017, all people wanted to know was why? Why would someone who was so important and seemed so pleased leave a show that is so popular and plainly successful? It turns out the cause was personal, emotional, and, most significantly, extremely human. Rory said in interviews later that the choice had nothing to do with fights, artistic differences, or even Brendan. His mother was involved in all of it. Rory had taken care of his elderly mother for more than 10 years while Mrs. Brown's Boys were busy touring and filmmaking. He was under a lot of stress from all the time he spent on the road and away from home. After his mother died, he chose to take a new look at his life. He said that for a while he had been emotionally distant from it. He said that I was sad on the show. I didn't like it. I had to leave. But he did love the folks he worked with. Or that he didn't care about his supporters, he just wasn't in the same place anymore. He was no longer happy, which had kept him going. Sadness, exhaustion, and a desire for something much more intimate. Rory's choice became a rather quiet act of self-care for someone known for his loud clothes and even louder laugh. Fans were all for that choice, however. Still, it was hard for them. Rory was not only written out of the program, but someone else was given the part. Damien McKiernan, a former Mr. Ireland, was given the role of Rory Brown. He tried to put his own spin on the lovable character. But the adjustment wasn't simple to deal with. Damien had done everything he could, but it just wasn't the same. The chemistry. There was no humorous timing or voice. The change was really distressing for a lot of historical viewers. The new Rory didn't look anything like their Rory, and the way he interacted with Agnes changed a lot. Something really vital is gone. Rory Cowan, on the other hand, did not leave. He moved to other ventures. He joined the cast of the long-running Irish soap Fair City in 2019 and plays John Bosco Walsh. That was a different kind of job and a different pace, which let Rory show off some dramatic skills besides comedy. At the same time, Rory Cowan was writing a book called Mrs. Cowan's Boy, in which he talked about his life, his sexuality, his family, and yes, his experience on Mrs. Brown's Boys. Rory painted an image of a man who has lived multiple lives as a performer, a caretaker, and a son, all while striving hard to be himself. Rory's leave from the show wasn't as big of a deal as his entrances, but the legacy of his character continues on. He wasn't always the loudest person in a scene, but he was often the heart of the character that made things interesting. Trouble and love in the Brown home. He was a source of joy for the crowd. He was a key part of the show. For Brendan O'Carroll, he was more than just a co-star. He was a friend I could trust. Rory Cowan may have taken off the wig and heels, but his performance as Rory Brown will always be one of the best parts of the program. Don't let your jaw drop. Because the next performer to leave Mrs. Brown's Boys is on a whole other level. Gary Hollywood. Gary Hollywood's exit from Mrs. Brown's Boys may be the most talked about of all the exits. Gary had been playing Dino Doyle, the flashy hairdresser and Rory's on-screen partner, since the first TV specials. Dino rapidly became the star of the show with his neatly styled hair, sharp tongue, and unmistakable charm. His funny connection with Rory, who was performed by Rory Cowan at first, made them a fan-favorite duo in a show full of pandemonium. Fans admired Dino for his over-the-top demeanor and close relationship, which added color and balance to the cast. But everything changed in 2020. Gary left the show again, but this time it wasn't because he was growing as a person or making a smooth transition. It happened all at once. It was quite noisy. And it got a lot of attention. It was quite upsetting for a show that was supposed to be one big happy family, both on and off screen, to have Gary go. There wasn't a goodbye episode that was warm. There wasn't even an explanation on television. Dino just disappeared from the Christmas and New Year specials, and fans started to ask questions right after. Gary said that the problem was simple, a disagreement over salary. He said that he and Damian McKiernan, who had taken over as Rory Brown, were being paid much less than the other actors for the 2020 Yandy holiday specials. Gary says that when he told the production team about his worries, they told him he couldn't be in any more episodes. He said he felt blindsided by the choice, especially since they had been on the show for more than 10 years. He later remarked that losing the job wasn't the worst part. He felt betrayed by a project that he thought treated its cast like family. Gary filed a lawsuit against the purported Brendan O'Carroll and other producers of the show after things happened quickly. He claimed that he was unfairly fired, discriminated against, and paid less than his co-workers. All of a sudden, it became a big deal in Ireland and the UK. It was no longer just another sitcom. Mrs. Brown's Boys was now deeply involved in a public judicial drama. The fans were split. Some people have come out in support of Gary, saying that he was wrongly fired after years of being a good employee. Some people justified Brendan by stating that it might have just been a mistake or a business choice. But it didn't matter what side anyone was on, the harm had already been done. The show had broken its family image. Brendan refuted the claims, saying that there was no reason for discrimination and that the whole incident was a sad misunderstanding. He commented about how surprised he was by how the matter has turned out in interviews, adding that he tried to work things out off camera. But with the threat of legal action and the bad press coverage, it was clear that there would be no reconciliation. Dino was gone for good. There was no other option in his absence. No new hairdresser, no stand-in for comic relief. The character, who used to be one of the main characters in numerous situations, abruptly disappeared without a word. For longtime fans, Dino's death was more than just a shift in the cast. He has added something extremely special to the world of Mrs. Brown had. Very loud and loving, flashy, but down to earth. His friendship with Rory and the funny scenes with Agnes were enough to make the show even better. Without it, some narratives just don't seem to be done. Some character relationships change in little ways. And it also serves as a reminder that even shows that are based on real life and make you laugh can sometimes be ripped off behind the scenes. The cast was used to being in the spotlight, but this time it was a different kind of scrutiny. Since he left, Gary hasn't said anything about the case. He has, however, said that he is unhappy with how things turned out. He has continued to play in theater shows and make public appearances, but he has never been in Mrs. Brown's Boys again. But for a lot of fans, he will always be Dino, the campy, confident hairdresser who lit up the screen every time he stepped in. There has never been a real replacement for him since he left. Even while the show continues on, it's clear that something or someone is missing. Jennifer Gibney. Jennifer Gibney has been in Mrs. Brown's Boys since the beginning. She plays Kathy Brown, Agnes's smart, contemporary, and sometimes unappreciated daughter. Her role is special, though, not just because of her character, but also because she is related to the show's creator in real life. Brendan O'Carroll, the man behind the legendary Agnes Brown, is Jennifer's husband. Their mother-daughter relationship on television has always been strangely charming, made much stranger by the fact that they are husband and wife in real life. But as the seasons went by, fans began to notice something strange. Kathy was slowly fading away. People usually wrote Kathy Brown as the straight man, the calm, reasonable, career-minded person who balanced out the craziness of the rest of the Brown family. Kathy was a psychologist, thus she was often the voice of reason, if not the butt of the joke. When her mother made it hard for her to keep any form of respect. In the earlier seasons of the show, her love life problems, broken relationships, and dry delivery were all common themes. But things started to change in the middle of the 2010s. Kathy was in less episodes. Her parts were shorter. Her presence, which used to be important, started to feel more like a cameo. People noticed it. People in the audience started to wonder if Kathy was going to be written out. Was there stress behind the scenes? And more specifically, was Brendan purposefully removing his wife's character from the show? Even while it appeared unlikely, the change was clear, and the rumors started to spread. Some people began to wonder if the tension between mother and daughter on TV was too similar to home. Some people thought that Jennifer might have just been tired of playing the same part, especially one where her husband and drag often talked over, dismissed, or made fun of her. The actuality is a lot less dramatic, though, and much more based on creative choice. Jennifer told interviewers that she and Brendan had talked about her absences and agreed on them. There was no fight, no breakdown, and no creative split. Brendan has been bragging about Jennifer non-stop, not in the media, but by calling her his best creative partner. They both said that Kathy's decision to leave the spotlight was on purpose. That would give Brendan time to come up with new tales for other characters, especially newer or less important ones like Buster, Winnie, or Grandad. At the same time, Jennifer was saying that she thought Kathy had reached the end of her rope. It's either a major change for the better or a slow fading away. It would make sense from a story point of view. Kathy has always compared the modern daughter striving to stay sane in a household that doesn't work. But for a few seasons now, a lot of jokes and failed relationships have made it harder to discover new ways to look at things. Jennifer and Brendan decided to give the character a less important role instead of trying to keep her in the game. And although it was never officially written out, it got fewer and fewer scenes and became more and more immersed in the background of important storylines instead of being a key part of them. However, for those who had been watching the show since the first episode, Kathy's absence was felt. Along with the others, she was the emotional heart of the show. A stable presence in a crazy world. The house was a little crazy without her constant sarcasm and tired eye rolls. There was also a slight difference in the dynamics of the series when she wasn't there. The tone became even more comedic and surrealistic because there weren't as many straight characters. Fans are still arguing about whether or not this makes the program better. But one thing is for sure, Kathy's departure left holes, even though it was slow and quiet. Don't be shocked, the last reason someone left Mrs. Brown's Boys will leave you stunned. Damian McKiernan. It wasn't only a cast turnover when Rory Cowan left Mrs. Brown's Boys in 2017. It was a huge change. Cowan had been on the show for decades and was a fan favorite because he was full of energy and had perfect timing when it came to comedy. When Damian McKiernan was named as his replacement, the pressure was immediate and huge. Damian, who used to be Mr. Ireland and didn't have many acting credits, was taking over the role of a beloved character. The actor who played him first had formed the character's identity so closely. It was both an opportunity and a task for Damian. Everyone agrees that Damian's portrayal of Rory Brown was significantly different. Rory Cowan's version of the character was loud, expressive, and full of flair, whereas Damian's Rory was more restrained, quieter, and more down-to-earth. And maybe not as vibrant. People observed that change. Fans of the show were quick to say something about the change, and many of them had trouble getting used to the new dynamic. It wasn't always about talent. Damian had his moments, but the synergy and rhythm that had been there between Brendan O'Carroll's Agnes and Cowan's Rory had shifted. For some, it seemed like a whole new character. Damian stayed on the course even then. He was on the show for years and did Christmas specials and live performances. Some viewers slowly accepted his version, while others stayed stuck with the original. It was hard to find the right balance between staying true to a character and putting your own spin on it, especially when someone else already knew it so well. Damian acted like a professional the whole time. He showed up, did his work, and fit in with the group. But in the end, nothing was as good as it seemed. People who saw it happen are now talking about the year 2000. Damian actually was missing from ads and special events. People started to say that Damien's absence was newsworthy because of the salary disagreement and Gary Hollywood's memorable departure. It has been said that both of the latest news stories about Damien and Gary say that during the 20-20 shoot days for Christmas and latest year's specials, they were astonished to find out that they were being paid a lot less than certain other cast members. So, when they brought it up, Gary was discreetly let go. People say that after that, he didn't think much before departing the station at the same time. There was no confirmation, goodbye episode, or anything else that said it was over. Damien just disappeared from the listings of cast members. This quiet exit conveys a lot. Mrs. Brown's sons often make people laugh and get a lot of cheers from the audience. But there was a lot of stress behind the scenes. The fight brought up questions about how the whole cast was treated, especially the performers who weren't O'Carroll. Brendan has refuted accusations of injustice, saying that it was a mistake and not a sign of how much an actor was worth. But the harm had already been done. Fans missed the absence, and critics brought up that point again and again. When cast members left the show, it seemed like they were gone in a flash. Without much explanation, or even without any at all. Damien must be feeling both happy and sad about this. He gets to be in one of the top comedies in Britain and Ireland on the other hand. On the other hand, he has to deal with people always comparing him to someone who has been dead for a long time, got into a fight a long time ago, and then just disappeared. Taking over a part that is so tightly linked to another performer is not an easy task, especially since the audience never fully lets go of the original. Damien did the best he could with what he had, but the character never really fit like it used to. Now we want to hear what you have to say. Which actor leaving Mrs. Brown's Boys surprised you the most, and why? Please tell us in the comments below. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Sign up to get more tales from behind the scenes. And remember to click on one of the videos on your screen to start watching. You won't want to miss what's coming up next.